Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or the Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we're going to be breaking down my top 20 quarterback and tight end rankings for week number 6 of the 2024 fantasy football season. But before we could get into things, I would like to ask that if you guys are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, that you please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. And while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, please make sure that you do leave a like on today's video. It would help me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter or X, please do so at NotoriousFantasy. So without further ado, let's get into my top 20 quarterback and tight end rankings and tiers for week number 6 of the 2024 fantasy football season. We begin with the S tier at the quarterback position for week number 6 with my quarterbacks 1 through 4. At number 1, we have Lamar Jackson of the Baltimore Ravens going up against the left hands up. Who are we? The Commanders at home in Baltimore. Now, Lamar Jackson, in my opinion, has been the most consistent quarterback in fantasy football this season. He's currently the quarterback 1 on the year, and he has been a top 9 quarterback in every single game. He started off the season as the QB 5, followed by 9, 4, 6, and 3. The safety is unmatched by Lamar Jackson, and the upside is just as significant. I believe this game up against the Washington Commanders will be a barn burner, a very high-scoring back-and-forth affair, which will lead to Lamar Jackson finishing as the QB number 1. At number 2, we have the other quarterback in this game, and that is Jaden Stormy Daniels, quarterback of the Commanders, going up against the Ravens in Baltimore. Now, while we have just talked about how consistent Lamar Jackson has been, Jaden Daniels has essentially been just as consistent. Quarterback 3, 18, 3, 5, and 12. Now, I understand that Jaden Daniels does have one game ranked outside of the top 12, but he is just a rookie, so we'll give him a pass for that game up against the Giants. Up against the Ravens here, again, I really do believe this is going to be a very high-scoring, tit-for-tat, back-and-forth affair that is going to be able to elevate both Lamar Jackson as well as Jaden Daniels into finishing as top 4 quarterbacks. At number 3, we got Joe Burrow, Joe Shiesty going up against the Giants in MetLife. Now, when it comes to the Giants defense, I believe they are drastically underrated. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like they have one of the best defenses in the NFL, but the defense is a lot more competitive than people give them credit for. With that said, while the Cincinnati Bengals team record isn't very good, it is because the defense is a steaming pile of dog shit. The defense is a turnstile, and that leads to Joe Burrow and the offense having to put up a bunch of points to win weekly. Now, the Giants don't have the best offense on earth, but when you're playing a defense with the skill set of the Cincinnati Bengals, you can certainly push this into being yet another high-scoring game. Over the last 4 weeks, he's been a top 10 quarterback in every single game. Last week, he was the quarterback 2 up against the Ravens, which just helps boost up the thought of Jaden Daniels playing that well. But here up against the Giants, I think this game is going to be sneaky, high-scoring, and I love Joe Burrow here. To close out the S tier, we got Jalen Hurts, quarterback of the Philadelphia Eagles, going up against the Browns. Now, Jalen Hurts has been kind of hit or miss so far this season, quarterback 10, 2, 24, and 13, but the return of Devontae Smith, the return of A.J. Brown is what is going to truly elevate Jalen Hurts here to potentially finish as the quarterback number 1, the same way we just talked about the Giants defense being a little bit underrated. Cleveland Browns defense is the exact polar opposite. They are overrated. And while they do have some pieces, I do ultimately believe that Jalen Hurts will have his way with the defense in this game, and he will finish as a top 4 quarterback. Now we move on in here to the A tier, and the A tier is absolutely loaded at the quarterback position this week, beginning with Jordan Love Me Tender, Love Me Sweet, quarterback of the Green Bay Packers, this week going up against the Arizona Cardinals. Now, I, for one, was banging the drum for Jordan Love like that Donkey Kong video game on the GameCube, and I was talking about how I loved Jordan Love, how I thought he was going to lay a smackdown, brother, on the Los Angeles Rams last week in LA. It turned out he didn't have as good of a game. Now, ultimately, he still put up 17 points. He was the quarterback 14, so it wasn't a complete and utter disaster, but he definitely didn't live up to my expectations. This week, up against the Arizona Cardinals, a relatively mid defense, I expect Jordan Love to bounce back, especially since Romeo Doubs will be back, and Christian Watson may play in this game as well. At number 6, we have Kyler Murray. Now, Kyler Murray has been pretty interesting this season as he kind of hasn't been very consistent. And I guess he has because he's been consistently mid. Quarterback 15, 1, 17, 24, and 5 last week up against the 49ers. This is yet another game where it could be very high scoring. The Packers defense isn't the greatest. And I think if Kyler Murray is playing up to his potential, he could be the quarterback one. The reason why he's not ranked in that S tier is because of the fact that he has fluctuated. He has been so up and down this season. He has Maserati Marv. He has Trey McBride healthy. So he should be good. Should be a lock to be a top 12 quarterback. But I am a little bit more worried about Kyler than compared to the guys I've ranked ahead of him. Next up, we got Dak Prescott, quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys, going up against the Detroit Lions in Jerry's World. Dak Prescott, when in a solid situation like here up against the Detroit Lions, is basically a stone cold lock to finish inside of the top 12. This is a game that could get very high scoring and could be one of the highest scoring games of the week. The Dallas Cowboys defense is down the drain. The Detroit Lions defense isn't all that great either, and that could lead to Dak having his best game. Yet his best game was the quarterback 2, but I do believe that quarterback 1 is in the cards here this week. Next up, we move to Baker Mayfield of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers going up against the New Orleans Saints in New Orleans. Now, this matchup is going to be tough, right? I don't think that the Saints defense are pushovers. But ultimately, Baker Mayfield has been a top 5 quarterback in 3 games and a top 7 quarterback in 4 games. His worst game was up against the Denver Broncos, which at that time back in week 3, we were like, how the fuck did you perform that bad up against the Denver Broncos? But hindsight is 2020. Looking back, the fact that he struggled against the Denver Broncos really isn't all that surprising at all. I get that you might want to bury him down the rankings because of the matchup, but frankly, the guy has played too well for me to do that, and he also has some sneaky rushing upside as well. Next up, we got Cole's Cash, Kirk Cousins of the Atlanta Falcons, going up against the Carolina Panthers in Carolina. Now, when it comes to the Carolina Panthers defense, one word comes to mind when I think about them, and that word is trash. The defense is not good at all. We saw Caleb Williams fillet them last week, and I think Kirk Cousins is going to do the exact same thing, coming off of a game where he laid a pipe down like he was a plumber. Shout out to Mario and Luigi up against the Buccaneers. Over 500 passing yards, 4 touchdowns, and 1 INT as the quarterback number 1. Up against the Panthers, this is yet another great spot. Do I think he's going to pass for over 500 yards? The answer to that would be fuck no, baby. But I do believe he feels close to a lock to be a top 12 quarterback because he looks so much better than he did to start off the season. And with Drizzy Drake London, Darnell Mooney, Kyle Pitts all percolating, that's going to lead to Kirk Cousins being very successful. At number 10, we have Justin Fields going up against the Las Vegas Raiders in Viva Las Vegas. Now, Justin Fields didn't have the best performance in prime time up against the Cowboys. Now, I am going to, in a way, brush that off because of the fact that that was a very weird game. The game is played much later than normal on Sunday Night Football due to the rain delay. The field was incredibly wet, so I'm going to just diminish it a little bit, kind of brush it aside, because prior to that, he was a top 12 quarterback in back-to-back games, with the team trying to push the ball more down the field, with the team trying to throw the ball more than 30-plus times a game. That is going to lead to Justin Fields being better for fantasy football. He's another one of these guys that could rush in multiple touchdowns in any given game, especially up against the Raiders defense. So I do feel confident in where I've ranked Fields. At number 11, we have Caleb Williams. Now, I am hesitant to truly give him the gawk 9,000 special here up against the Jaguars and rank him much higher because the game is in London, and games in London, games over the pond, games overseas, whether it's in Germany, London, in Brazil, in the BBL Bowl, typically things are a little bit messed up, right? Sometimes you might think, oh, this is going to be a real high-scoring game, and then it ends up being a snooze fest, or maybe you think the game's going to be very low-scoring, and then it ends up being the Rams versus the Chiefs from, 2018, Goff versus Mahomes in prime time. If any of you guys remember that game, of course you do. If you're watching football back then, that was, the best game of the year, but Caleb Williams going up against the Jaguars defense. The Jaguars defense is Swiss cheese. They have so many holes, and Caleb Williams is going to be able to take advantage of that with all of the weapons that he has. If this game was in America, I would be sitting here banging the drum, potentially ranking him inside of the top 8. But because the game is in London, and just because, honestly, Caleb having one great game as the quarterback 6 last week up against the Panthers, I'm just going to pump the brakes a little bit, because if you get fully ecstatic about it, you get erect imagining this matchup, and you're like, oh, he's going to repeat as a top 6 quarterback. That is how you get very, very disappointed. Now we move to the B tier with my quarterbacks 12 through 16. At number 12, we got Josh Allen of the Buffalo Bills going up against the New York Jumbo Jets. Now, it has been ruled, it is decided that Josh Allen actually wasn't concussed and he was suffering a different injury. He passed all the concussion protocols, so he's good to go in this game. Now, a lot of you guys are just going to go with your priors. Josh Allen is a very good quarterback, which I agree. You drafted him as a top 3 quarterback, so I'm just going to rank him inside the top 10 because I drafted him as a top 10 quarterback. He's got to be that for me every single week. But the Jets defense is still incredible. People will panic because they fired Salah, while the defensive coordinator is now the head coach of the team, so there's really no need to believe that the defense is going to take a step down. So going up against the Jets is a hard code to crack, and Josh Allen has been very hit or miss this season. He starts off the season as the quarterback 1, and then he's the quarterback 28, 1, 28, and 19. So if he was to completely shit the bed on Monday Night Football and fall outside the top 18, I would not be surprised. Now, Josh Allen is Josh Allen. He might be able to avoid a bunch of big sweaty men coming to tackle him. He could hurdle over someone, right? He could have a huge game in a tough matchup, but frankly, the matchup is too tough to have me ranking him any higher. And if you were like, Nick, I'm going to play Daniel Jones or Jared Goff, cool Joe Flacco, CJ Stroud over Josh Allen, I wouldn't argue with you. Next up, we got CJ Stroud going up against the Patriots in New England. CJ Stroud is basically a lock to any given week, finishing anywhere from quarterback 6 to 16. If he finishes outside of that range, that is no bueno. Now, losing Nico Collins is obviously far from ideal, as Nico Collins was starting to look like one of the best wide receivers in the National Football League. You match that with the fact that they're going to New England. It's going to be cold as fuck. Nipples going to be erect, 45 degrees, and it's going to potentially rain. That scares me a little bit. Rain isn't necessarily the worst in fantasy football, but it could have players dropping balls. So CJ Stroud in not the best matchup against the Patriots without Nico Collins. While you definitely want to start him, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I'm super excited to do so. Next up, we got throw it on a dime like I ain't even trying. Daniel Jones, quarterback of the New York Football Giants, going up against the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, every single week of the season, essentially, we have gotten the shovel out and buried the Cincinnati Bengals defense. They are so bad that it is almost laughable. If their defense was just halfway competent outside of week 1 up against the Patriots where they got ass blasted, you could argue that they should be like 4-1 at this point, but their defense is non-existent. The defense never shows up. So that's going to lead to, while, you might have issues with Daniel Jones, while I'm not going to sit here and pretend like Daniel Jones is the answer for the Giants, Allen Iverson, or that he is a great quarterback at the NFL level. But frankly, when you go up against the Bengals, Daniel Jones could look like prime Mike Vick. He could look like fucking Joe Montana here because of how bad the Bengals defense is. Again, the hesitancy in not ranking him higher is just the fact that he's Daniel Jones, and I know he can mess up an opportunity like this. Next up, we got the Goffinator, Jared Goff, who went 18 for 18, and that's got me feeling nicey. Shout out to Mr. Gruden, the Gruden grinder himself. If you guys follow him on TikTok, absolutely electric. Knock one time if you are with me. Going up against the Dallas Cowboys this week. Not only did he get 1 million touchdowns in that game, he also caught a touchdown pass from Amon-Ra St. Brown. Now going up against the Cowboys in Jerry's World, coming off of a bye week, where the week prior, again, he was perfect like Sidney Sweeney's rack, and I expect Jared Goff to have yet another competent game. Hopefully coming out the bye week, the momentum doesn't run out and he's able to have a very solid showing. To close out the B tier here, we got cool Joe Flacco of the Indianapolis Colts going up against the Tennessee Titans in Tennessee. But before we talk about cool Joe Flacco some more, I would like to give you guys a quick word for our friends and our partner over at Underdog. If you're new to Underdog and sign up using promo code Notorious or by clicking on the link in the video description, you will get a free pick of Joe Burrow higher than half of a total yard. You match that with any of the players playing on Sunday, not on the Bengals, or on Monday. And if both of your picks hit, you receive 3 times what you put into your pick'em. If you want to utilize multiple picks, say instead of 2, you want to do 3, 4, 5, you will get a higher payout. Again, sign up using promo code Notorious to get your free pick. Joe Burrow higher than half a total yard, plus a first-time deposit offer of up to $1,000 in bonus cash. So make sure you guys do sign up using promo code Notorious or by clicking on the link in the video description. Now, is Joe Flacco a lock to play this week? No, it could be Anthony Richardson. They're saying things are leaning towards being a game time decision. The game is at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, so we should know by 12-ish o'clock who the starting quarterback is going to be for the team. If it's Anthony Richardson, I would be fine ranking Anthony Richardson here. Why? Because we know Anthony Richardson has the upside of what he did up against the Houston Texans, which is nothing short of downright incredible, where he could score 30-plus fantasy points. The problem is the floor is the basement. There's a chance he re-aggravates his injury. There's a chance he ends up playing like Stevie Wonder out there where he can't read a defense and he makes a lot of mistakes. There are going to be a lot of high highs with Anthony Richardson, and there's going to be a lot of low lows. Joe Flacco also kind of pulled the wool over our eyes last season in Cleveland, right? He has all these great games, and then he goes up against the Texans and Houston in the playoffs and looks like a old man out there. He lost all of his swag that he had, and he looked like shit. But during the regular season, he was great. This is a regular season game up against the Titans in Tennessee. I think Joe Flacco could easily finish as a top 12 quarterback if they give him the nod to start. But ultimately, there is that thing in the back of my head, behind my brain, hiding back there that says, talking about Pangea, but what it's actually saying is, Joe Flacco, he's ancient. Eventually, it could fall apart and he could have a bad game. Next up, we move on into the C tier here with Andy Dalton, the Red Rifle, Aaron Rodgers, and touchdown Jesus, Trevor Lawrence. Andy Dalton had a disaster class up against the Chicago Bears in Chicago in the Windy City. It was a windy game. The flags on top of the goalpost were fucking going hog wild. They were shaking more than some ass at the Vanilla Unicorn. So Andy Dalton had a down game. It is what it is. Use the Men in Black thing where they put the thing up to your face and it wipes your memory. Forget about it. Quarterback 12-8 the 2 weeks prior, going up against the Falcons, a team that just got terrorized by Baker Mayfield and friends and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I'm not comparing the Buccaneers to the Panthers, but Andy Dalton should be good enough here to have a top 18 finish. Next up, we got Aaron Rodgers, Mr. Discount Double Check, who's got a fat Q tag next to him. Questionable. He was limited on Thursday with the ankle injury. Going up against the Bills on Monday, he should be good to go. Will he be able to maneuver correctly is definitely a question, which has me suspect on him. The Bills defense is also far from pushovers, so Aaron Rodgers should be fine, but I'm definitely not excited to start him. Andy Dalton's clearly the best guy in this tier, but I didn't feel confident enough putting him in the same tier with the guys above him. Next up, we got Trevor Lawrence. Going up against the Bears is a recipe for disaster, but he should throw the ball a high enough amount of times, and he has looked good over the last 2 games to where I feel confident that he's not going to be a big fat bust. Final guy to discuss in today's video is going to be Spencer Rattler. Now, when you're looking at guys like Will Levis, the mailman, Deshaun Watson, Justin Herbert, the pervert, Bo Nix, Drake May, Aiden O'Connell, what I would like to do is just rank the guy here that I think is the most fun, right? Spencer Rattler could be the quarterback 35. He could get benched for Jake Haener, right? He could. But he could also mess around and be a top 5 quarterback. Now, is that the most likely scenario? No, that is far from the most likely scenario, but I do believe that it is possible. Why is it possible? Because of what I've seen in college and what I saw in preseason. Now, again, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that Spencer Rattler, just because he looks like the Walmart version of Patrick Mahomes, is going to go out there and absolutely devour the Buccaneers defense. But I like the matchup for him. I like the fact that he said he's going to force feed the ball to Chris Olave. Again, all of the guys in this range are risk, so why not take the most high upside option? And that is Spencer Rattler. Beginning the tight end position here in the S tier with my tight ends 1 through 3. Initially, prior to Thursday Night Football, George Kittle was my tight end number 1. If you check out my Patreon, $7.50 a month, where I post my rankings and answer all your guys' questions, that is on there. So George Kittle was my tight end 1, but now Jake Ferguson's my tight end 1 because he already played. The S tier at the tight end position are just the guys that I feel are reliable, the guys that I can trust weekly to get a bunch of targets, to get a bunch of production out of them. Now, obviously, we know the tight end position fluctuates weekly. We know the tight end position is incredibly volatile, like a shit coin. So while I'm not going to sit here and pretend like Jake Ferguson's a lock to be a top 3 tight end, he feels safe. He feels like a nice condom wrap around your team. He feels like a nice cozy blanket at night. So Jake Ferguson, top 8 tight end in 3 straight games, 7 or more targets in 3 straight games, high scoring game environment. You gotta like Ferguson. Trey McBride has been relatively safe as well this season. Now, maybe not at the same degree as Jake Ferguson, because Trey McBride has had 2 games outside the top 12, but he's going to get you 10 points, and he has the upside to get you 20-plus points. Week 2 up against the Rams, 19 points as the tight end number 4. Here against the Panthers in yet another high-scoring game environment. I think he should be able to level up inside of the top 5. At number 3, we have Brock Bowers. Now, Brock Bowers has had a very interesting season so far, and I would describe it as a shit sandwich, right? Tight end 3 and 3 to start off the season. That's the great, right? Those are the buns. Shout out to Samala Hayek. Then week 3, week 4, that's the shit. Tight end 17, 24, and then the other bun is tight end 2 last week up against the Broncos in Denver. That sandwich reminds me of, if you guys have ever seen Click with Adam Sandler, that's a great movie. It is like, it's just funny. Like, again, if you have my sort of humor, you probably think it's funny. Some of you guys will think it's absolutely stupid. I think Adam Sandler is funny. But in that film, there's a point, and the point of the movie, why it's called Click, is because he's got a remote, and when you click the buttons, you can do certain things. You can pause, and in this scenario, he hates his boss. He goes up to his boss who's eating a sandwich. He pauses, pulls his pants down, rips ass in the guy's face who's eating a sandwich, and then he goes out of there, he unpauses, and he's sitting there. He takes a bite of his sandwich, and he's like, Vanessa or Clarissa, whatever his assistant's name is. He's like, did someone take a shit in this sandwich or something? He's like, this is a shit sandwich. I remember watching that when I was like 11 years old and thinking that was like the peak of comedy. And of course, I'm way funnier than that, right, guys? Like, everyone in the comment section thinks I'm hilarious, even though, honestly, I am definitely not the funniest guy on earth. But I appreciate all of you guys. And again, Nick, you're so stuck up. You're so full of yourself. I'm really not. It's just, I'm just talking in general. Again, if you don't think I'm funny, that's okay. But that's fine with me. Again, I'm not everyone's cup of tea, right? So, Brock Bowers, pretty hot, pretty cold, then hot again. Hopefully, he can keep up that hotness. At the A tier here, we got some other guys that I feel confident in, but the confidence level dwindles, as you guys will see, as you get deeper and deeper into the rankings. The A tier, my confidence level dips a little, but I'm still pretty confident. Tucker Kraft, no Luke Musgrave, back-to-back weeks as the tight end number 1. Is he going to be the tight end number 1? More than likely. Fuck no, baby. But is the upside there? Yes. Especially up against the Cardinals in a game that could be very high scoring. So I'm not going to sit here and pretend like he's a stone cold lock to be the tight end 1, but I do think he should at least be a top 6 tight end. Next up, we got Dalton Kincaid going up against the Jets in MetLife on Monday Night Football. Back-to-back weeks with 6 or more targets, 3 straight weeks with 5 or more targets. My opinion on Kincaid, probably no Khalil Shakira, which should lead to some safety for Kincaid to potentially be the number 1 weapon on this team. The matchup is far from ideal, but Kincaid has been solid this season. Next up, we got Sam Laporta. Based on where we drafted Sam Laporta, he's been a complete and utter unmitigated disaster, but I feel like there are better days ahead, right? I feel like he is going to get more integrated into this offense. Like, while it might feel like, oh, you drafted him as your tight end one, you got absolutely fisted by the Hulk. I don't think it's over just yet. I think we should continue to have at least some positive thoughts about Sam Laporta. While I'm done ranking him in the S tier, you should still at least give him the credit of being an A-tier tight end, especially up against the Cowboys in what should be a very high-scoring game. Then we got Kyle Pitts going up against the Panthers in Carolina. Last week was his highest-scoring game of the season, 7 receptions on 8 targets for 88 yards. Now, everyone ate in that game outside of Bijan Robinson because the offense, Kirk Cousins, was on fire, NBA Jam style. Can he keep it up against the Panthers? Probably not. And Kyle Pitts, probably not, especially because, he's kind of like the third option on the team, but he's a big body in the red zone. And I do think, again, like in terms of my confidence level, I at least feel fine throwing Kyle Pitts out there because I know the upside is there. Next up, we move on into the B tier. Again, the confidence level drops a little bit here. Pat Freiermuth going up against the Raiders in Viva Las Vegas. Back-to-back weeks, he has found the end zone. I think he could do it thrice here up against the Raiders in Viva Las Vegas. The targets have been fluctuating heavily. He actually had his lowest amount of targets last week in Dallas, but again, that was a game where it was rainy, a game where it was a little bit weird, so we'll discount that, and we'll hope he gets to his normal 4 or 5 targets, which could lead to probably a safe 8-point floor, and the upside being 15 plus points. Next, we got up Dallas Goedert. Now, Dallas Goedert has been nothing short of fantastic this season. Tight end 12, 16, 1, and 6. But if you notice, his best 2 games were when A.J. Brown is out and when Devontae Smith is out. And now both those guys are back. So what is that going to mean? It means Dallas Goedert goes back down the rankings. Next up, we got Evan Ingram, Eazy-E of the Jacksonville Jaguars, who has yet to play since week number 1. Hamstring questionable for week number 6. This is a tale as old as time for Evan Ingram this season, as we've been talking about his potential return. I think we knew he was probably going to be out of the Browns game. That was so long ago at this point, but like week 3 against Buffalo, oh, maybe he plays. And week 4 in Houston, maybe he plays. And last week against Indy, maybe he plays. And now it's like, okay, in London, let's hope he plays. If he doesn't play, put his backup tight end inside of the C tier because that guy is very nice. Next up, we move into the C tier here with a whole lot of tight ends. Tyler Conklin, Cole Kmet, Zach Ertz, Isaiah Likely, Cade Otton, and Dalton Schultz. Essentially, here you're praying for a touchdown. Tyler Conklin is questionable with the hip. Tight end number 12 last week, 12 fantasy points, 6 or more targets in 3 straight games. Clearly getting a push in this offense. Same offensive coordinator. For some reason, they kept Nathaniel Hackett's dumbass. So Tyler Conklin should be in for a healthy dosage of targets. Cade Otton, on the other hand, his targets come every once in a while, right? Their wife doesn't love him enough. He doesn't come very often, but when he does, he comes in a huge way because that's just how it works, right? Week number 3, up against the Colts in Indianapolis, he had them calling him Puppy. 10 receptions, 11 targets for 97 yards, and a touchdown as the tight end number 2. Now going up against the Jaguars in a wet dream spot. He could potentially replicate that. Problem is, they have DJ Moore, DeAndre Swift, Roschon Johnson. They have Keenan Allen. They have Rome Odunze. They've got a lot of cooks in the kitchen, which hurts Cole Kmet to ultimately reaching that upside and putting the defense in the figure 4. Next up, we got Zach Ertz going up against the Baltimore Ravens in Baltimore. Despite the fact that the motherfucker had 8 targets last week against the Browns, he came down with just 2 receptions and 10 yards, which sucks. Because he was finally fed and he didn't have a great game, but he's another one of those guys that just feels like a safe bet to get like 8 fantasy points, so I'm fine ranking him here. Next up, we got Isaiah Likely, a team that uses 3 tight ends. Very scary. He had 3 targets, 3 receptions, 13 receiving yards. Oh, that was a shit game. But guess what? He scored 2 touchdowns. Now he's going up against the Commanders. Another game where he could potentially score 2 touchdowns, but his targets since week 1 have been deflated. Next up, we got Cade Otton going up against the Saints in New Orleans. Week 3, week 4, 8 or more targets. Then he comes back down to earth in week 5 with just 4. Loaded offense. If Mike Evans ends up going one-on-one in the Thunderdome with Marshawn Lattimore, they end up getting into a fucking fisticuffs matchup, and they both get tugged out of the game, Deshaun Watson style, then Cade Otton could be able to elevate himself because With no Mike Evans, he's going to get more targets. And then we got Dalton Schultz. No Nico Collins. It pushes him up. Going up against the Patriots is a good matchup for tight ends. 5 or more targets in 3 straight weeks. Maybe this is the week he finds the end zone because he hasn't done it yet this season. Next up, we move on into the D tier. And here, if you have to play these guys, good luck, pal. Mark Andrews, tight end 18 last week. 5 targets, 4 receptions, 55 yards. They're using Charlie Kohler. They're using Isaiah Likely as well. Just a shitstorm at tight end here. He could get 5 targets. He could get 1 target. He's Mark Andrews. He still has it. He's still talented, but the volume isn't coming his way. Next up, we got the Chief, David Njoku. Acknowledge him going up against the Philadelphia Eagles in Philadelphia, but I can't acknowledge him more. Why? Because Shaw Watson is terrible. He practiced on Thursday. He plans to play on Sunday with a knee and ankle injury. Only 2 fantasy points last week. He's good. Quarterback play isn't. Then we got Hunter Henry, hopefully getting fully unlocked by Drake May. But I want to see it before I believe it, before we suck off Hunter Henry. And then we got Mike Gesicki, who has essentially been stabbed in the back. What's the fuck is the girl's name from Game of Thrones style? Arya Stark style. Mike Gesicki here. Eric All has been taking up a lot of targets. He's still destined to potentially score because it's a primetime game and the tight ends love primetime. I think he could eat against the Giants, but again, enough Eric All means you can't rank him any higher. So thank you guys all so much for watching. If you did enjoying, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button with the left hook, Alex Poetan, Pajeda style. Make sure you guys leave a like on today's video as well. It would help me out a ton. Check out one of the videos on your screen if you haven't seen them already. And make sure you guys do check out Underdog, promo code Notorious to get your free pick. Joe Shiesty, higher than half a total yard, plus a first-time deposit offer of up to $1,000 in bonus cash. Check out one of the videos on your screen if you haven't seen them already. Love you guys. We'll be back on Sunday with my live stream at 12 Eastern Standard Time. Love you guys as always. Good boy.